So now we will move on to the ASAD model in contractionary monetary policy. We are asked to analyze the contractionary monetary policy in ASAD model graphically. We should draw the shocks in the price income diagram ASAD model, and then the interest rate income diagram, or the ISLM model. We should show the movement of this shock in both diagrams, and then we are asked to explain verbally the impact of contractionary monetary policy. In a usual practice, we would start with a constant prices, and then we would move on to the effect of ASAD model in the short term and medium term. We are also expected to describe the change of income, interest rate, and price level in each step in comparison to the initial equilibrium. For that, we have already drawn an initial setup of our ISLM model in the below diagram, and in the upper diagram we had a SAD model. So we have said that there is a decrease in money supply because the central bank is undertaking an contractionary monetary policy. So this is to say that if there is a decrease in the money supply, this would have an impact on our money market equilibrium, where it was initially money demand was equal to money supply. However, now there was a decrease in money supply, so there is an excess demand of money, and households would tend to sell their bonds to get money. So we have said that if there is a high money demand or a higher money demand, with this regard, households would go to the bond market and they would try to sell their bonds in order to get money and in order to satisfy their money demand. So in this case, we are saying that the money supply decreased in the economy, so overall economic activity would decrease. So this is to say our aggregate demand would shift inwards from AD0 to AD1. And since prices are constant, we would reach at a point in the graph where it is indicated that where price would be indicated to be price B, and our income level would be YB. So we have said that households would tend to sell their bonds in the bond market, and if there is an excess supply of bond in the bond market, the price would actually fall down. If the price falls down, there would be an inverse relationship with interest rate. That is to say, an interest rate would rise. So here the contractionary monetary policy by the central bank is also captured in the ISLM model, where our LM is shifting inwards, and both shifts, that is to say the shift of aggregate demand from AD0 to AD1 and the shift of LM from LM0 to LM1 are caused by the reduction of money supply or contractionary monetary policy. So at this point, we have reached at a higher interest rate at point B in the ISLM model, which is indicated as IB. So a higher interest rate indicates that there will be a lower demand for investment. So this is to say there would be a decrease in investment, so that there would be an excess supply of goods on the goods market. The increase in interest rate from IA to IB would imply that there is a reduction of income from YA to YB in our diagram, which we have just indicated. So here at point B, we can see that there is a higher interest rate and prices are constant, so PA is equal to PB, and we are at point B where our aggregate demand is actually lower than our aggregate supply. And in ISLM curve, we can see that there is a higher interest rate. Due to the higher interest rate, investment demand would decrease. Since investment demand is decreasing, we have a lower income level from YA to YB. So moving on to the short-run equilibrium analysis, as we can see in the ASAD model, we have a lower aggregate demand because prices were fixed in the beginning. So at point B, aggregate demand is actually lower than aggregate supply. So there is, to say, an excess supply in the market. Here at point B, as you can see, aggregate supply is around here. However, aggregate demand is here. So this is to say, at point B, there is an excess supply in the market. If there is an excess supply in the market, we have already seen that there would be a relationship with the price, an inverse relationship with the price, where prices should reduce or should adjust to a point where aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply. So this is why we are reaching at a point which is to be indicated by point C, and this indicates that our aggregate demand actually adjusted and our aggregate supply and aggregate demand are in equilibrium at point C. So at point C, we would have an income level of YC, and we would have a price level of PC. So at point C, we can also see that there is a reduction in price from PA and PB to PC. So the reduction of price, as we have seen earlier, would impact our real money supply, which is given by the formula M divided by P. If there is a reduction in price, our M divided by P would increase. So this is again indicated by an increase of LM curve from LM1 to a new LM curve LM2. So now in the new setup, we have a new equilibrium in our ISLM model, which is to be indicated by point C, where LM curve shifted from LM1 to LM2. And here we would have again a new interest rate, which indicated to be IC. So this point C is called the short-run equilibrium in ASAD model. In this point C, we have actually a higher interest rate from the initial interest rate because our interest rate was IA and now it increased to IC. And we have actually a lower income rate because we had initially YA as an income, but now we had an income level of YC, which is lower than the initial level of income YA. So now moving on to the medium term, we would look at the ASAD model and we would look at our price expectation in this regard. So price were falling from PA and PB to PC. So price expectations were higher, but now they should be adjusted and a price expectation in the next period should be lower than the initial price level at the current period. So if price expectation is actually reducing, then suppliers would say, okay, if I'm expecting a lower price at the next period, or let's say next year, I should produce more now, and I should be able to sell more now. So that is to say, if there is a low price expectation in the next period, suppliers would tend to produce more now, to sell more now, so that they would get a higher price now instead of having the lower price in the next period. So this is again to say our aggregate supply curve would shift outwards or would increase to a point or to a curve which is represented by AS1. So here we would have a new equilibrium indicated at point D. And at point D, we have a new price level to be indicated as PD. So again, as we can see, price level kept on decreasing. First, we had kept price level to be PA and PB to be constant. We had kept it to be constant, but in the short run, it decreased to PC, and it led to the reduction of our LM curve from LM1 to, it led to the increase of our LM from LM1 to LM2, because if price decreases, our real money supply was increasing. Now we have more decrease in price from PA and PB to a point in our new equilibrium point D, which is PD. So this is again to say our LM curve would shift more again, and our AS curve shifted outwards because we had a lower price expectation, and our LM curve would shift to the right because our price actually decreased. So when price decreased from PA to PD, first we have seen that price decreased from PA to PC. Our LM curve increased from LM1 to LM2, and now at point C we had also a decrease in price from PC to PD, which impacted our real money supply, M divided by P. So it led to an increase of LM curve to our initial LM curve, LM.0. So I would just draw the new LM curve, which corresponds or which is equal to the new LM curve, LM0. And now we have reached onto an initial equilibrium, which was given by point A. And we have also a new equilibrium in our ASAD model, which is given by D. So here at our new equilibrium point D, price is lower than the initial price level, because at point A in equilibrium we had price A or price B. But now at our new equilibrium D, we had a price PD, which is lower than the price A. However, we can see that interest rate came back to its normal or its previous equilibrium level IA, and income level is also returning to its natural level of income, which is represented by YA in our diagram. So what we have just seen was like we had AS-AD model, IS-LM model, and we had said there is a contractionary monetary policy which reduced our money supply. If money supply reduced, then there would be a lower economic activity, so we had reduced our aggregate demand to a new curve AD1, and due to this reduction of AD to AD1, we had reached onto a point where we say we are on point B, which indicated excess supply, because at point B, aggregate supply was greater than aggregate demand. Because of this contractionary monetary policy, we had shifted our LM curve from LM0 to LM1, and we have reached onto a new equilibrium point B with a corresponding income level of YB and interest rate of IB. We had kept prices to be constant, so price A and price B were equal. But at the short run, we have seen that there is an increase in interest rates because of the contractionary monetary policy. So this increase in interest rate had impacted our investment, and so this actually impacted our income, so it shifted our income from YA to YB. However, in the next period, due to the fact that we had an excess aggregate supply in our ASAD model, in the short run, aggregate demand adjusted, price level also adjusted, so there was a reduction in price from PA or PB to PC, where our aggregate demand made an adjustment process here, and there was an equilibrium between aggregate supply and aggregate demand at point C in short run. In short run, this was also translated into the ISLM model, because our price level decreased from the initial level. We had actually an increase in our real money supply, which was represented by the formula M divided by P. If P decreases, the whole term M divided by P increases. So we had shifted our LM curve from LM1 to LM2, which was actually due to the fact that price reduced from PA or PB to PC. So we were at point C, and point C was regarded as a short-run equilibrium of ASAD model. And then we moved on to the medium term, where we were looking at price expectations. In the ASAD model, as you can see, price decreased, so economic agents were adjusting their price expectation, and they were saying, or they were expecting price to decrease at the next period. So price decreasing in the next period directly implies that production or aggregate supply should be increased at this current period, so as to reap the advantage of a higher price in this period, because they were actually expecting a lower price in the next period. So this is to say, since they were expecting a lower price in the next period, they have adjusted their price expectation, and they have increased their aggregate supply, which actually moved our aggregate supply curve from AS0 to AS1 due to the fact that price expectations were adjusted. When we moved from AS0 to AS1, we reached onto a new equilibrium, which is represented by a point D. And at point D, we have noticed that the price level kept on falling, and it actually decreased from PC to PD. So this decrease in price level was also reflected in our ISLM model, where we have said our money supply or our real money supply should increase because price level decreased. Our real money supply, represented by the formula M divided by P, should increase because our price is decreasing. The denominator term decreases, the whole term should increase. So that is to say, M over P, P is decreasing, the whole term M over P should increase. So this is why we said we have shifted LM2 to LM1 to the initial point of our LM curve. So in the ISLM model, we have reached onto a new equilibrium, which is represented by D or A, which is having the same level of income YA, and the same level of interest rate IA. However, in the ASAD model, compared to the initial equilibrium point A, we had a lower price in the new equilibrium point D, but our income level remained constant and it remained on its natural level of income. So with this, we would actually conclude session 6 of macroeconomics exercise class. If you have questions, please feel free to write us an email. Thank you for your attention. This would be the end of our exercise session.